Come here, Hansel. Oh, hi. Oh, hello. We're having our coffee. We're in a meeting. We're good.
Wow.
Going.
Well, doing well.
Good.
I'm learning how to use it. I just got an iPad that I'm trying to conquer.
Oh,
And so far,
I was
so
just
good.
thinking that we have like a crazy one of those like new fancy dancy monitors that honestly, Greg, it's like high def TV. And it
Very
tells you
cool.
like if the baby's face is covered, and like it's so funny. I'm not one to spend a ton of money on all this baby stuff, but when it comes to safety, like that's one thing that I'm like, I'm happy to spend the money on. Like, I don't need the fanciest stroller, but like I want a nice monitor.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't blame you.
realized that I borderline have to set up the monitor to like I think I'm gonna get one of my old iPads up and running because on your phone you start staring at it because it's
I
so
know.
fascinating. And you're like, I'm crushing my battery because I'm just watching him. And we don't really put him on the monitor that much. Like I hold him most of the time, but oh my gosh, the monitor is like fascinating. But I was just having that thought this morning that I'm like, I really have to re-engage one of those old iPads.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Cool. All right. So, yeah, very cool. So waiting for,
Waiting for our friend John.
so, in the meantime, we've got.
I did think he had a good point, by the way, of the threshold of what we can ask for without pushing these guys over the edge.
Well, I think we have to make sure that we have all the stuff in already, saying
Yeah.
basically an overarching statement that everything we have on the site now is expected in this build, because that gives us a lot of stuff and a lot of flexibility. And
yeah, I thought that was a really good point you had, and I think that you're right that we're so lucky that we are revamping a site that already exists, so we already have functionality and a baseline and all that kind of stuff, and that everything else that we're adding, you know, I just think that was like a really smart point, that like this isn't actually starting from scratch. We're doing a serious rebuild, but like we at least have functionality and a baseline of what we need to continue.
yeah, well, the functionality and the tools in general are there. You know we need a video system, we need photos, we need forums, all that kind of stuff. So that's, we know we need that stuff in there. We need the news and the blogs and a way to iframe other people's sites. We know we need all that stuff in there. I think they call them X frames or something now. I think we're past iframes now.
That would not be my level of expertise.
Yeah.
I know what it needs to do. I don't know the lingo.
Yeah, we're basically becoming a Safari, which is cool.
Yeah.
With the Google overlay, because we're curating, which is cool. But the we have to really take this to the next level and make sure that we are increasing the capabilities or refining the capabilities. These guys have built hundreds of sites, so they've seen how other companies and sports companies also.
Yeah.
They've seen how they go through the onboarding process. So, nothing we throw at them is going to be surprising. What we have to do is make sure that we've defined it in our way.
Right.
And that's I think what John and I really have to impress upon these guys is that we have a way, we have a culture that we're trying to build. We have, systems that we're trying to put in place that make sense for us and for our people. But when you're talking about coaches and recruiters, that's a whole different story. What I'd like to see is that we are doing by the nature of the onboarding process, we're getting a lot of the stats that people need to recruit, that the coaches need to recruit.
Yeah, no, I think that, yeah, and again, I know we have to be sports specific, but I think that we probably don't need to get that deep into the weeds for this level of iteration. I think it's just a matter of we need the ability to have stats.
I think we have, I think we actually have to go that route. I think we,
You think we have to get that far into the weeds? I thought that was
I-
almost what John was saying, that we should maybe not do.
well, I think for this part of it, it's really important that we're asking the right questions to somebody when they originally sign up. Like when you
Right.
sign
Oh,
up,
that
what
I
do we need for the first level, then we need your email address. Then when we get the email address, we go, this is the next level that allows you to really personalize your experience.
Yeah, no, that I agree with, because I think that, you know, again, my concern was, I think people are going to check multiple boxes. Like, you're going to have parents that are also athletes. You're going to have, you know, moms that are also the team manager, that like they might want to look at their own tennis group, but then they also have to manage their child's baseball schedule. You know, I
Right.
think
No,
that we
we
want
already
them
have that
all
on the
to-
site. I don't know if you've seen that, but we already have that on the sign up thing.
You know, that I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think that when people sign up, they need to be able to check multiple boxes. And that's something that I just want to make sure that we can keep delving in and people can keep adjusting their profiles, and like we'll be able to market to those people because we were able to really properly define them at the beginning.
Yeah, I think Greg, I kind of came in the middle of that, but
Hi there.
I think what you have to be cautious about is you get them to sign up, you send an email to their email address, they click a link, it verifies their email address, they log into the site, and you prompt them to complete their profile. And I think what you have to be cautious of is forcing someone to go through
Right.
the effort of defining their profile before they can use the site.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't blow them
Right.
out. Right.
So you don't want to, you know, immediately flash up their profile and say this. You might be able to capture a few important things, like what's your full name, first and last name.
Right.
You know, maybe you ask them, you know, what's the primary sport or two that you're interested in, and like that's it. But you can continue to prompt them that they only have 10% of their profile, you know, with a little widget on the page that says only 10% is completed, fill your profile now. You can have little pop-ups that show up eventually. So you can encourage them to do their profile, and maybe they'll spend 2 hours doing their profile and putting in stats, but you don't want to force someone into that process if all they want to do is sign up and experience and see what the site has to offer.
Exactly. Right.
Totally. Yeah, we don't want to cut anybody off.
We need to know what we definitely need to have on there. We need to know what I think the 4 or 5 questions to sign up are first name, last name, email, and age and zip code. And if we do that, we're going to know, or date of birth. We're not going to ask age, we're going to ask date of birth. And if we do that, we have a great start. Number one, as soon as we have an email, we have value.
Totally.
We have their age, it's even more value. But it's really important if they say that they're under 18, boom, that triggers that other set of events where we have to get a parent involved. And that we really need right off the bat. We can't really do without that.
Well,
But
why age 8? Like if someone is 17, why do they need a parent? I mean, there's no legal requirement there. The legal cutoff for like the COPPA laws are 13.
yeah, exactly.
And I forget if it's under 13 or if it's 13 and under. I forget the actual language right now. I'd have to go back and look at that.
And do we only need to know their age on certain things, right? Like if they're engaging with certain parts of the site, would they need parent permission? Because obviously to go on a website, they can be whatever age they want.
Right, and they'll be able to get to the content.
Well, that's not true. That's not true, Kelly.
Okay.
If they're, and I'm not sure if it's technically or legally, if it's under 13 or 13 and under, but with that said, when they're under that age, you can't even allow them to sign up for the site without parental permission.
It says under age 13.
Got it. Okay.
So under 13. So when they sign up, they're going to put in an email address and pick a password. We're going to send an email to that email address. They're going to get it. They're going to come back. They're going to have to fill out some mandatory data, which would include date of birth. And if we determine that they are under 13, it triggers the parental process for approval. Okay. Now, if someone is 13 to 17, Greg, you said if they're under 18, you have to trigger a process. And my question is, why for 13 to 17-year-olds are we doing that? Why is that mandatory?
For our protection, because there's going to be some R-rated content. There's going to be cursing on the site, you know, on videos and that kind of stuff. And we're going to need to know what's, you know, what the kid can see. And there are going to be a lot of parents, you know, a large percentage of the parents are going to say, I want to have some kind of knowledge of what my kid's doing on the site. A lot of the governing bodies.
But there's a couple things here, and I just want to kind of rifle these off. One is, what do you do about emancipated teenagers? Someone who's 16 or 17 but is considered a full-fledged adult because they were an orphan and they're on their own, or they've left the home. They just don't associate with their parents. So you have, you know, like if you look at marriage laws in certain states, you can't get married without parental permission if you're under a certain age, unless you're considered emancipated.
Right.
And then, so that's one thing, is how do you handle emancipated teenagers at that point? The second is that while you may want to restrict the content for those people because there's cursing or in some cases, a parent wants to control what their 16-year-old sees, but there's no legal requirement to do so.
Right.
Okay. So the question is, if you say, okay, this person has now self-identified as a teenager, 13 to 17 years old,
right,
then if you force them into this parental approval process that's undesirable for either them or the parent,
yeah,
you're cutting them out of the site. So I question the value and the purpose of that kind of restriction for that age group.
Well, the value is that it makes our database and our site more attractive for the governing bodies, because they're looking for safety and they don't want to have any kind of liabilities by recommending they use, or the kids use UB Sports. Same thing for the leagues. Leagues want to know that there's a layer of safety and security that they're getting for their teenage players. So I'm concerned about not having those things in there.
Is there a way though that when they get to certain points, it triggers that layer of protection, as opposed to, like, I think John's point of, we don't want to cut people off before they're like navigating through the site. Is it if they sign up for certain things that we have to protect them, or like how? I'm just wondering if we can trigger it later on.
The other way around. Yeah, we can circle the other way around and make the content provider or the guy who or a person who uploaded the video state that this is a G-rated thing when they're uploading.
Or I'm just saying, like, do we not prompt people to have to enter all of this regulating stuff until they're at a point where they would need to?
Or
I think to Kelly's point, what if a 16-year-old signs up? You don't necessarily need parental permission because they don't fit the COPPA age. But if they want to join a tennis-related group and the tennis governing body wants that protection, then for them to join anything related to the tennis field, you trigger the parental.
Yeah, that was kind of my point. Like, let's not trigger it until we have to. So, like, Greg, for like, let's say we do something with USA Cycling. I know that's somebody that you're talking to, and like they require certain things. obviously we have to comply with what each one of these guys wants, but if we don't have to get to that point until there are a certain number of steps down the line, like, let's not lose people early because of something that's kind of my point.
Yeah, it's fine with me. We can do that. I think it's also important that we do the content providers, if they're, especially videos, if they're going to put anything up, there should be just a check button, say, this is a G-rated, it's okay for minors, or it's not okay for minors.
Yeah, as long as we're covering, I think you have a good point about covering ourselves and making sure that we're protected. And I think that I don't know the legality of how to do that, but I think the more you can push off on other people to be responsible.
Right, and it's just,
Well,
the adults are the ones that are supposed to be responsible.
The problem with that, of course, is what I think is PG,
Right,
somebody else is going to think is R.
No, John, you're totally right. So I think that we need to get comfortable with how we cover ourselves properly, and make sure that we're doing that, obviously. But I think that we're trying to do it obviously in mind of not restricting things unnecessarily, I think is the right way to say it.
We can try to have
Yeah, and the fact,
do that.
The fact that you have members uploading their own videos that can be seen by others. Hold on one sec.
That sounds like Looney Tunes.
I think it is. I think it's Foghorn Leghorn clicking in.
I was like, John, that sounded like Looney Tunes.
Yeah, well, I like my phone to ring loud when I have the ringer on. If it's in my pocket, if I'm outside, I need to be able to hear it. Where was I? I lost my train of thought now.
Talking about the
members
minors
uploading
and getting
videos.
the content provider.
Oh yeah. So if you have members uploading their thing, I mean, this is kind of a one-off, maybe an edge case, but you get, some kid, he's on the site, he uploads some malicious videos, maybe they're pornographic. Okay, so
it's definitely something we might have to deal with. I think that we should talk about it.
We're going to have to deal with that for sure.
The question is, who's moderating or viewing those videos before they become accessible?
Right.
What is
we have to have some type of a system.
If we say that a video does not become available to anybody else, maybe if it's a coach or a recruiter or something of that nature, you don't necessarily need to put it into a queue for a moderator to look at. Okay, they have permissions and it becomes accessible, an ambassador perhaps. But for a random person, just a regular member who doesn't have those kind of privileges, does it go in a queue and not become public until it's been approved by someone on our staff?
I like that.
And if you have 1,000 videos that were uploaded today,
that's what I'm thinking.
who has the time to sit and watch all of those? How do you? So that kind of moderation is important with the videos, just like it would be if you have open forums where people are posting comments and you just get somebody being rude or malicious or they start spewing racist things, or this stuff happens all over.
So part of the terms and conditions for anyone uploading, there has to be like a click here button. I agree that this is going to be number one, I believe it's G-rated. Number two, I agree that there's nothing like that on it. And three, I get.
Yeah, but we still have to have staff.
Yeah, totally.
Looking at it.
There needs to be, because somebody would just check those boxes.
Yeah, there's a lot. You can get community volunteers to look at those things.
So it could be after the fact. You could make it public and moderate it after the fact, which I think is the best way to go about it.
Right.
And by every video, for example, or even where there's comments, you can have a button or something that says report this. So if it does get viewed by someone and it's not appropriate or something, they can report it, which would bump it up in that queue for moderation.
Yeah,
you know,
Totally.
and somebody would, so we can handle it that way, but that process has to be done. I mean, you can rely on people to check a terms and conditions box or say, yes, it meets all these criteria that you want me to meet. But the fact is, if I'm being malicious, those check boxes don't mean shit.
yeah, and you're going to
You know.
do it. So, and that has to, you're right. There has to be a button on every video that's seen, every piece of content that's seen, that says, mark this as inappropriate. And you're right, immediately goes up to the top. And you also have to lock down the person who put up the content.
Totally. And Instagram has like, they have a good model for that. So, I mean, I think that that technology and that thought process exists. I don't think we're not reinventing the wheel on that one. So
No,
that's
not at all.
nice.
Yeah. And YouTube too. YouTube will shut you down or say this is adult content. So that's something we definitely have to have on that when it comes to having people put in content and then see content. That's cool.
All right, so if we only have another like 35 minutes or something, because you both said, I think, that you had an hour.
Yeah.
I want to touch on communications, that piece of it. Okay, so over time, we're going to be sending different types of emails to people. Some will be automated, some will be triggered by a decision somebody makes on the team or whatever. And I want to kind of review what they are, because the idea is there's certain types of messages, like you don't want just one generic unsubscribe, which unsubscribes them from anything UB Sports.
Right.
Okay. So there's certain types of messages that you can't unsubscribe from, such as account related stuff. You know, your account was signed in, you know, your password was changed. You know, let's say if a subscription is running out for something, or a piece of content is expiring and you have to renew it. Maybe you only allow videos to last on the site for a year, unless they like renew it or something and say, yeah, okay, you know, because technology and training and things become obsolete over time, right? So a video that's valid today might not be in 1 year. So, you know, I don't know that you want to maintain and manage those perpetually. You upload it today, it'll automatically expire in a year unless you take some affirmative action to retain it or something. So there's going to be account related emails that you can't opt out of.
And subscription related.
Subscription related. Yeah, I mean, that would, to me, that would fall under account related.
Yeah, well, to me, there's a UB Sports account, and then there's the outside subscriptions that we get people to sign up for that we're getting paid every month from, right? So those are separate, but you're right. All those are essential. No question.
Okay. So those things you can't unsubscribe from. However, like there's 4 categories that I can think of off the top of my head, and this is, Kelly, where I think you'll have valuable input. We're going to be sending, you know, marketing emails to promote the site.
Right.
Okay. So you want people to be able to unsubscribe from just general marketing and promotional email. You also want them to be able to receive those kind of emails, but opt out of third-party marketing.
Right.
Okay. So, you know, I don't know what our plan is for list rentals based on our members. Okay. But we might share or sell portions of our list. People have to be able to opt out. So that's 2. There's marketing, UB Sports marketing and promotions, and there's third-party marketing and promotions.
Yep.
There are also going to be emails that you get from an ambassador, one of the sport ambassadors. There may be team emails for a specific team that you're on.
Right.
And there may be parental related emails that you get because you are a parent. Okay.
Yep.
I
You have an
don't know
opportunity to
if
unsubscribe
we
to
should.
those.
Yeah, I don't think that we should allow opt-outs on the parental emails.
Agree.
But the others we do. So the question I have is, what other types of things do we want to like what categories do we want to allow people to opt out of? And, you know, perhaps you break up, instead of just having marketing and promotions, you break it up where here's product promotions, here are site promotions, et cetera. And if you think of Facebook, for example, when you want to look at the notifications that you can opt out of, I mean, they have
Like
1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Like I can opt out of tags, comments, photos, friends' birthdays. So I don't know that we have to be as granular as that yet. You know, that's a little extreme, but we need to define the categories for opting out and for not opting out so that the developers can build that in. You know, we're going to need that day one as soon as we start sending emails out.
Then
Right.
what you're saying immediately is that we don't know exactly, and that's probably going to grow over time. So what we probably should do is have on our dashboard an ability to adjust what people are allowed to unsubscribe to. I think whenever we have an opportunity to grow, or
it would be a part of their it would be a part of their profile. Right. So they can go in and manage the type of communications they get. So, you know, for me to opt out of something, I can either log into UB Sports and go to my profile and uncheck a box. That's one way to opt out. The other is to click a link in the bottom of the email.
Right.
Which,
and that could bring us
so
back to
both
that
of
box.
those. Well, not necessarily, because in order to stay in compliance with your spam regulations, you know, like there's a purpose behind one-click opt-outs where you click the link in the email and that's all you have to do to unsubscribe.
That's true.
Okay, so I don't think because you're not going to be able just to take them to that portion of the profile, because then they're going to have to log in.
Right.
Okay, so you can have a link right there saying I can adjust my opt-ins and opt-outs right there on that page, right under the unsubscribe button. You know, click this link.
So John, there's been studies.
I mean, I think it would be specific for that type. So if I have two emails in my inbox, one is a marketing promotion and the other is an ambassador message, the unsubscribe link in the marketing message is only going to opt me out of the marketing emails.
Right.
The unsubscribe and the ambassador message is only going to opt me out of ambassador message. So the copy or the language of that unsubscribe is not just going to be like one word that says unsubscribe or opt out. It's going to say unsubscribe from ambassador related emails.
Right.
Okay. You know, this kind of, I think if we were going to think of the granularity that we want, and you think about, you know, opting out of an ambassador email, do we want to allow people to opt out of the tennis emails, but not basketball?
I was thinking sports specific as well. You
You know,
opt out of tennis stuff, and it might be seasonal. I might not want to see skiing information during the summer.
I think the goal is to keep as many people hooked in as possible. Oh shoot. We got a leak in our basement and a crying baby.
So I don't know that we can come up with a full list now, but can the two of you kind of come up with ideas on what you think, given what we've talked about so far. Is
Yep.
I believe you both understand what we need to do. Can you work on identifying
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
like the topics that we're going to want to start with?
Totally, because I'd like to put some thought into it. We had done a whole study when I was at Tough Mudder. That was, we actually studied like what made people like stay in versus opt out, and thresholds of like, we want to keep people as engaged as possible, but you don't want to over inundate them with too many emails. Like, there's a lot of studies around that I'd like to put some thought into what that looks like for us. So I'm happy to work on that with Greg.
Okay.
When, John, in your opinion, obviously we're going back to the developers. Obviously there's gonna be back and forth for like a week on this contract. Like, what stage do we have to have this very well defined? Like, is this something that we need to have done in the next week, or is it in the next month?
No, I think within the next few days, ultimately we need something to put in the SRS.
Okay.
In the spec. Okay. I don't think it has to be fully flushed out and defined.
Okay.
But I think that we can say we are going to require opt-out capability for, by team or by sport, something like that. And we don't necessarily
we can
have
say
to
by category and then define the categories later. Do you think that's acceptable?
Maybe, but I'd like to have the developers kind of know that we would want to do it by sport, but not by team, because the model that they build in the database is going to be different.
That makes sense.
Depending. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we can kind of come up with a basic idea, like we don't have to sit here now and say, okay, well, these are the different sports or these are the different teams. But if we can kind of come up with a general language, it'll be in the spec. And then it's a matter of actually, when they go to implement that, defining, okay, well, we're going to want to do it, by sport or by category. Do I want to opt out of, team sports, but not individual sports? Something like that. So, and anyway, let's give some thought about that. Most importantly, I'd rather you guys focus more on the marketing breakdown, okay? Because you may get something that is promoting the site. This is what's new on the site. This is what we've added. But you might also be marketing product. Check out these new rackets, or check out these new sneakers. Okay, so to me, those are both marketing, but they're totally different things. Okay, so what kind of breakdowns within the marketing arena do we want to have the ability to opt out? And I don't know what the balancing line is, but there's definitely a balance point in having too much granularity and too little. Okay, so that to me is probably the most important thing that we need to identify up front, is the marketing kind of arena, the topics.
All right, well, I'm happy to take a look at that, and I would like to kind of see what other folks are doing. I think that would be helpful.
Right. The next thing that I want to touch on is the different user types and roles and the definition of that. I think we lost Kelly for a minute.
Yeah, she stepped away.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I'll wait till she comes back.
Apologies, I'm here.
The next thing is kind of when we talk about members, like user types and profile types and things of that nature, we need to come up with a pretty specific definition for these guys. This has to be well defined in the app. So just so we're kind of level set, every time somebody signs up, their profile is going to be a certain user type. Okay. And you can only be there's a one-to-one relationship between a member and a user type. And those user types, there's basically anonymous, member, and admin. Those are really the 3 user types that we're going to have. The next thing is that there are member types, and let me see exactly what they called it. They called it profile types. So the profile type, hold on a second. I'm trying to type myself a note while I'm talking, and that's not working.
No worries.
The profile types are athlete, coach, parent, fan, recruiter, etc. So those are profile types. Now, this is going to be a one-to-many relationship, because I could be a coach in one sport, a fan of another, a parent in another, etc. Okay.
Totally.
So the profile types we need to really define, and I know that if you go in your profile on the site now, there's a list of 5 or 6 roles, right?
Right.
So we need to refine that list and make sure that it covers everything that we want, even if it doesn't currently exist on the current site. The idea, though, and this is what I think that we need to come to agreement on, a consensus on, is the profile type will, because it's a self-identification, should not be used to drive necessarily any procedural logic built into the system. In other words, just because somebody says that they're a parent in a sport doesn't mean that we should now trigger that parental approval process.
Right. Right.
I believe that when I say that I'm a parent or a coach or a fan or an athlete, those are going to be used to drive what's displayed on every page that user goes to.
And or quite frankly, analytics of marketing. Like if I'm coming up with email blasts and I know that I'm going to target the parent group because it's going to be parent-based content, that's what I would use that for. Correct. So it is, anything that's demographic we'll be able to target people for, certainly. But as it relates to the site and the app, if I'm a coach for basketball and an athlete in baseball, when I go to a baseball page, the content is going to be geared towards an athlete. But if I go to basketball, it's going to be geared towards a coach. Now, how do you control? Sure. I mean, you can essentially, if you're an athlete, you might have training videos show up top. Right. But if you're a coach, you're not going to have training videos at the top of this page. You're going to have them lower. Got it. Right. You would have different content that's relevant for a coach. Now, if someone says they're both a coach and a parent, there has to be cascading rules on how we display the content. But that's what the profile types, the self-identified profile types will drive, is how the content is displayed to the user and how we can select users to target communications to. Okay, that's what the profile types are. Okay. So the takeaway is we need to
understand what are the profile types that we need to target people with messaging and to display content on the page.
Got it.
Well, I think if you're
Then
a coach, no matter what type you are, if you go to one of the sport portals and you're looking up a sport, you're looking for the whole range of information available to that sport. But as far as what video shows up on that front page, that can be adjusted to the most recently watched or the most popular training video for that week, you know? And for a under 18 player, it would either be fan-based, or kids love fails. Kids love when they see goofy, funny stuff going on in their sport. So it might be some kind of a trigger for someone under 17 to see either fan-related or fun-related stuff. I don't know.
John, are you asking for us to come up with what are the categories?
yeah, I mean, obviously the ones that exist on the site now will keep, but maybe not. I mean, maybe, I forget what they are. I think there's 6 of them there. You know, Greg can tell us whether he wants to get rid of any of those or keep any of those, but let's make sure that that list is complete.
Right.
Okay. And, you know, the key thing with the profile types is that it's self-identifying, you know, so it's not, you know, I could come in and I may not be a coach, but I want to see coach content. So I say I'm a coach. Maybe I like the way that a coach's page displays better or is more to my preference than a fan, the way it displays for a fan.
Right. And right now we're just using that so that they get a chance to identify themselves as the shows here. But it would be very cool if we could adjust the content that they see up front on their front page if they say they're a coach versus a player or a parent. That'd be really cool.
So I would throw out just throwing out, spitballing some extra categories. After parent, I would almost have like team manager or like parent manager, I think is a category. And
that'd be a team manager.
What?
That would just be a team manager or administrator.
Well, I don't know about that, because a coach may rely, especially in youth sports, a coach may rely on a parent to start like the phone chain. When a practice is canceled, there's a phone chain. So a team manager is not necessarily someone who's really responsible in any way for the team or the sport. It's
right, but they might have some
managing
administrative stuff that they need access to. So I think, and we can help with that. So I would think some type of checkbox of like, I'm the momager of the baseball team is important.
Okay, can we call it an administrator?
Youth sport administrator?
Team administrator?
Yeah, something along those. I don't really care what we call it, but I think it's important for us to recognize that that's something that we should be considering.
What do you think? John's thinking.
Yeah, I don't know, like team administrator. I mean, I don't like the sound of that.
Well, whatever.
It sound like it's really formal, but we need to, I understand the concept. I just don't know that that's the right term.
All right.
But that's somewhat irrelevant at this point. I mean, we can call it whatever we want.
We can call it whatever we want. We just need
deal
the ability for it to be there.
So again, to recap,
organizer,
we seem to be in agreement that the profile types that are self-identified, that a member picks and chooses their own profile types. These will be used to target messaging and to display content differently for those people. That's what I see these for. So let's come up with kind of what we think we need specifically here. Unlike the opt-out issue where we can kind of generalize yet, we don't have to get too granular in our definition of that. The profile types are going to be specific because as the developers move forward, the developers aren't going to do anything to build the messaging platform or whatever. So it's really the content display. They're going to have to create wireframes and the screens differently based on these profile types. Okay, so when someone says that they're a coach in a sport, it displays this way. If someone says that they're a parent, it displays this way. And we'll have to kind of, at some point, think of like the hierarchy. So if I'm both an athlete and a coach in a particular sport, and we display content for athletes and coaches differently, which takes precedence when I come to this page, okay? So we have to be able to manage those competing interests on the back end. So it's important to get these profile types the way we want them. They are self-identifying, but they will drive what that user sees, how it's displayed on the screen, okay? Related to the user types and the profile types, there are going to be some other types, and I can't really think of a good term for it yet, but we have to be able to identify a member who is technically a child or technically a parent because they have this approval relationship defined. Okay. Now, if I go back to these profile types and I say that I'm a parent in a sport, that doesn't trigger this parent-child relationship and the workflow. Okay. There's another process that does that. It's based on the age when you sign up, the age that you capture, that kind of thing. So a profile is going to be defined as a parent if there's this workflow.
I think the
profile is also going to
be, John, I think there should be something, if I say I'm a parent in a sport, you should be prompted to say, who is your kid or kids? That could prompt a whole new membership.
But I think we have to be careful that might turn some people off.
Yeah, I think, Greg, to your point, yes, if you check that I'm a parent, you can prompt them and say, is your child a member?
Right.
Let's connect you to your child.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So yes, we can prompt them, but what that does is that will really trigger this other parent-child process.
Precisely.
And I should be able to say, no, my child's not a member, but I'm still a parent.
Right, exactly.
So I want to see parent-related content, okay?
Right.
So in any case, when someone does go through that parent-child process, those two profiles, the parent and the child, those accounts are now flagged to be a parent type and a child type. So to kind of clarify this, we have user types, which are anonymous, member, and admin.
Right.
And user type kind of will define the types of things you can see and do on the site, your permissions. The profile types, which we're looking at on Greg's screen, is player, pro, coach, etc. that's going to be for messaging and communications as well as content display. Then there's this third type, which I don't know what to call it yet. And I don't know if we have anything besides just parent and child. Okay. Like, do we need to have a coach and a team member have a relationship in the same way that a parent and a child does?
Doesn't that happen automatically if the coach is the coach of a team and the kid joins as a member of the team?
Well,
Good.
that, I mean, that's kind of the question. Okay. So I'm the coach of a basketball team, and whether I send an invitation to my players or they kind of organically show up and join the team, you know, however that works, you know, by them saying, you know, I want to join this team, this group, whatever it is, you can identify that relationship.
Right.
You know, so let's say, you'd be able to figure out that they belong to this team and here's the coach, et cetera. So you may not have this flag on these profiles that correlates them because you can find it through the team. Okay. Right. But in the parent-child relationship, when someone says, yes, I'm underage, so my parent has gone through the process of signing up and approving it, there's a special flag that has to be set on those profiles so that anything that involves that child, the system knows that they have to notify the parent.
Right.
Okay. So this is a different type. It's not the user type. It's not a profile type. You know, it's another type. I don't know what to call it yet. And my original question is, I don't know that we have other relationships where we have to have that kind of a flag, like a coach and a team member, et cetera. That was just one example that I could think of, but I don't think that we necessarily need to define that in the, you know, flag it in the same way that we would a parent and a child.
Well, I know in, like, so for instance, like Team Snap, because this is helpful to like think about a competitor. So I'm signed up with Team Snap as both a coach and a player. So for instance, like my paddle team was using it for organizing our schedule. And then my hockey team that I coach simultaneously was using it to communicate games and practice times and all of that. And it automatically prompted me the first time that the mom, who's the manager, had signed up our hockey team. Like when I signed on to Team Snap, it prompted me, are you a part of this team? I said yes. And it was an administrative barrier that double checked that I was really on this team, because you don't want some creepy pedophile, you know, logging in as a 13-year-old on the basketball team. Like, I do think we need permissions and stuff there that somehow the mom or whoever's in charge of the roster uploads the team roster, and those are the only people that are allowed to sign in.
Or
I don't know if that's kind of not what you're getting at, but that I think we do need, I think we have to be careful with stuff like that.
Also, when a team member just signs on their own onto UB Sports or is already there, they should be able to find the group or the team, and then the person who's administering the team has to approve that person's membership into the team or the group.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I don't know that that lends itself to requiring a flag, a separate flag, in the same way that you have parent-child, right? Because there's the workflow of the site is no different, right? I mean, as soon as I get approved to be a member of that team or something like that, that's it. When the coach wants to communicate to the team, I get the messages. You know, there's really,
I think it's just a matter of there needs to be some type of barrier. Are the people that are on the team really on the team? And I think once that they've been determined that they are, everything from there on is fine.
Okay, hold on a second here. If I create a group, one of the questions I have is membership. Make this group searchable, allow members to invite others, allow members to
Okay.
create and update, and allow members to create. And over here, it's public. This group has a public calendar. Photo albums can be made public, but under the membership part, you should be able to make that decision whether anyone can join, or you have to invite
Okay.
them in, or if somebody can ask for admission.
That seems like it's a pretty safe, yeah, private invite only. People can, okay, that
request
seems
to
like
join there.
that's pretty good to me. I just want to give you guys a heads up. I do have a hard stop in 3 minutes.
Wow, time flies.
Okay.
It's never fun.
Well, okay, so let's go back. You guys need to define the opt-out items, not
Okay.
necessarily down to the most detailed granularity, but we definitely need the opt-out
Okay,
topics.
that's the
Definitely.
unsubscribe.
Okay. The profile types, the self-identified profile types, I want to know what they're going to be, whether it changes from the existing list. Like, Kelly, you raised a change you'd like to see, like some kind of team manager, whatever we call it, right? I don't think administrator is the right word. It gives you the wrong impression of what it is. But nevertheless, let's refine that list. And the third thing is, let's define if there's anything else, any other kind of relationships that are similar to parent-child that are going to drive the way the site works.
Got
Okay.
it.
There is a relationship between a team coach and a team player, but I don't know that that's going to change the way the site functions and operates.
And the trainer,
Not in the way. Well, so if we feel that that does have an impact in the same way that a parent and a child has an impact, then we should define that. If the only one that we recognize is parent-child, then I'm not even going to really think of a term for it. But if we could have a few other types, like a trainer and a client or something,
right?
Okay, then I'll have to come up with a term. Like, obviously, you can't call it a profile type because we're already using that term. So that's the other thing. So those are the three things that we need: the opt-out, the profile types, and what else do we have that's in the realm of parent-child?
Like an operational relationship of some sort.
I got to run, guys. I'll think about those things and definitely loop back. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. Be safe.
Thanks.
Greg, I think the last thing that we needed to come up with is kind of a definition or description of the onboarding process,
right?
Which they asked us for. So if you can kind of give some thought to that. I mean, I signed up once. I haven't really kind of gone through and signed up with any fake accounts to try to see how it works. But if you can kind of come up with like a written description, I'll wordsmith it and I'll make it nice. So even if you just do it as bullet points, just kind of put together something that describes the current process.
Right.
And then you and I can look at that and say, well, we need this here and there, and we want to do this at this point, et cetera. In my mind, and I'm going to try to flush this out as well while you're doing this, is the onboard is I provide email and password. I get an email.
You want your first name and last
which
name?
allows me. No, I think you make it simple. You're going to want to verify their email, right? To make sure you're getting valid emails and stuff like that, and to prevent spam and everything else. So make it simple. I want to sign up. All I have to give you is my email and a password.
Right.
Okay. System will then send an email. Hold on. The user will receive the email and will click the verify link.
Right.
Once they're verified, either they will be automatically logged in, but sometimes certain systems will force you to log in again after you just, like I'll click the link in the email, I'll come to a page, it'll ask me to log in. I log in, my account is now verified. A lot of times what happens is you get a page that says, okay, you've successfully verified your account, but it doesn't keep you logged in. It only used your email and password to verify.
Right.
So we can decide what's best for us later. But once that happens, after the verification happens, the next time that the user logs in, which might be right after they verify, it could be a couple days later, whenever, there's going to be some mandatory data for the profile.
Yeah, you have to have a click here button on the email that they get that verifies, that says click here to verify and go back to the site. And then you go back to the site and it says, okay, these are the 3 questions we need answered before you can go on to the site.
Right. So we need to understand and define those specific mandatory elements.
Okay.
One of the questions I have for you is, how do you want to address names? And we can ask people for a first name and a last name.
Right.
Okay. Or you can just ask for one name. Okay. Instead of first and last.
If we only have one name, that's going to be a problem for a parent finding the kid or a coach finding the kid.
Potentially. So first and last is, the obvious thing. But the question then becomes, if you're not doing just one name where it's everything, the question I have is, how do you handle people that have 3 names? Right. So my name might be John Daniel Smith. Okay. Think of a woman who keeps a hyphenated last name or something like that.
Right.
Okay. So
wouldn't that just be their last name? Just, Smith Martin or whatever.
Right. So that's, we're going to have to identify that, because like if you go to, normally when you type in a name, it doesn't allow you to put spaces in, right?
Right.
Or special characters and things like that. So if you start to allow that, my name on the site could be, John is my first name, and then my last name might be Daniels Gives No Fucks. Like something like that.
Yeah.
So when you start to allow spaces, now again, these are edge cases where this isn't normal, but there are people who have 2 separate words as a last name. So, if that's the way our last name is going to be defined, that's fine. But we need to give some thought to that as these guys go and build those pieces out. So in any case, the mandatory fields, I want to get back to this, the onboard process. I give you my email and my password. I receive an email from you. I click the link and verify my account. And then the very next thing is that you're prompted to enter some mandatory profile data.
Right.
And you can't do anything. Your account is not, it's verified, but it's not active. You
Right.
can't do anything on the site until these mandatory data elements are provided.
Right. So you have asterisks.
So
there. We're used to that.
There's name, date of birth, and what else?
Name.
And you can give some time. You can.
Hometown, zip code, and then sport and what my role is in those sports. It might be sports I watch, sports I play, sports I coach, or something like that, or my roles in those sports.
Why do I have to identify the sports right away?
So I can send you content that's specific to those sports. So you're getting emails and messages on the sports you play, and you become involved in those sports.
What if I don't want to be involved in a sport and I want to use the site, generically to see, I want to go and check out the basketball page sometimes and baseball.
That wouldn't be, I wouldn't have that as an asterisk. I would just leave it like, if you want to fill it in, you can.
Okay, so the question I have is, what data elements do we want to require before we allow people to use it? Not what are we asking them to complete, but what are the fields that are absolutely essential that we have to get them to answer before they can continue to use the site?
I would say really first name, last name, date of birth, and zip code or hometown.
I think zip codes, there's challenges with both. Obviously, like one city like New York has a bazillion zip codes, right?
There are 3 Brooklyns in the United States.
And sometimes zip codes cover a region that's more than one city.
Yeah. Or the opposite.
So, right. So, I mean, maybe we ask both ultimately, but zip code is probably the most well-defined entity.
I would say that.
And if you wanted to target New York athletes, for example, you can do it with zip codes.
Right. And vice
as opposed
versa,
to the city.
if I want to find out cycling routes within 10 miles of me, by them having my zip code, I'll be able to do that.
Yeah. So I would say zip code over city.
Yeah, I would too.
Are there any other data elements that you think are absolutely critical? Also, I think we should use the term, like, we need to clarify zip and postal code, because if you're in Switzerland, for example, we have some international people.
You want to say country?
What's that?
You want to say country? Actually, with JavaScript, you can actually have that defined by what country you're in. JS will say, it'll say postal code if you're in a foreign country, and zip code if you're in the United States or Canada.
Right. So it would seem that country should be a mandatory thing. So
cool.
Name, date of birth, country, zip code, or postal code, whichever.
We have a lot of foreigners on the site, so that's important. So country, and then if you say the US, then it populates zip code versus postal code.
Yeah. I mean, that, you could just have it say zip/postal, whatever.
Right.
Whatever. Doesn't really matter. What terms you display on the screen to the user.
Okay.
Are there any other fields that you think are absolutely mandatory before you want to allow? Okay.
Definitely not. I think that from that point on, it's got to be needs based. I would really like everyone to see that I bench press 250. That kind of thing.
Okay.
Right. We'll find ways to prompt them to do that.
Okay, so after I verify my email,
Right.
I'm required to enter certain mandatory data. And at that point, I'm done.
Right. And it could be
Okay,
on
I can go.
page. You could,
I
right.
can go and use. I can go and use the site.
Right.
The rest of the onboarding process would be to complete your profile.
Right. But you could ask that right there on that page. You get done with
You
putting.
could, yes. Yes, but I want to define it, how it gets displayed, and how, whether it's all on the same page or whatever is irrelevant.
Okay.
Remember, if someone's doing this on a mobile device like a phone, you only have so much screen space. So
yeah.
in one sense, you're only going to ask the name, date of birth, country, and zip code on a mobile device. That's all that's going to be on that screen.
Yeah, and then go have fun.
In the mobile.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so the rest, after the mandatory profile data is entered, maybe at the same time, but the onboard process will be to complete your profile, join groups, which could be teams, sports, pages, etc.
Well, you want to start off with the sports and then drill down to the teams and stuff. You're going to say what sports do you play, blah, blah, blah. And that kicks in that, what team.
Right. Now, as I go through the mandatory profile data, if the date of birth is under 13,
right,
we trigger the parental approval process.
Right.
Okay. If the date of birth tells us that they are 13 to 17, we do not trigger the parental approval.
Well, we ask if they want a parent involved.
Yes, we can offer the parental approval.
Right. Or parental connection.
And later, if I join a sport or team that requires parental approval, then you trigger that approval process.
Right. That would be between 13 or from any age up to 17.
Right. Up to and including 17.
Right.
So for example, if the tennis association says, yeah, anybody under 18 has to have parental approval.
Right.
I sign up and I say that I'm 16. You say, do you want to connect with your parent or identify your parent? I say no, that's fine. I go through, but now I join, the tennis sport or a tennis team or something. Then we trigger that process. Oh, to join this sport or this group, you're required to have parental approval.
Right.
Because the tennis association said,
yeah, exactly.
You have to, unless you're
put on them. Right. The USC requires you to put in your parent. Right.
So that's kind of the way I see the onboard process.
Exactly. That's why I see it.
So give it a little more thought. I'm going to try to write something up that I can pass off to the developers.
Right.
To kind of address their question about what is the onboarding process.
Right.
But I want you, in addition to the other things, give that a little more thought as to whether there's anything else that we need to do in that process.
We might
Okay.
want to have on the profile types a facility manager, because then that clicks in scheduling and RSVPs of the constituents.
Okay.
And it might just be, you might never see that on the grid that we have there, but it might be something that we ask as they sign up. You know, are you the manager of a facility? I'm thinking about that as I talk. And it might be just that.
Yeah, well, think through that.
And then
you know, and once, like, I'm also thinking that once they fill out the mandatory data,
there's a tree of other
actually,
you ask.
Actually, after they verify themselves, when they verify their email address,
Right.
we're probably going to send a welcome email.
Right.
After they complete the mandatory profile data, name, date of birth, zip code,
Right.
we will send a second email. Now, granted, they may fill out more than just the mandatory data. They may, you know, complete their full profile, but we will send a second email to them that says your profile is X% complete, right?
Right.
And encourage them to complete their profile.
Right. Okay, so with JS,
and it might also encourage them to, you know, join some popular groups or something.
Yeah.
You know, some kind of promotional email after they do their part of their profile.
That's what I like about asking at least what their favorite sport is. Because that at least gives us a hook, you know? And we can start sending them emails on that hook sport.
I think
it doesn't have to be mandatory, but at least just
okay. I agree with that it shouldn't be mandatory.
No,
but it does fall into, you ask it at the same time that you ask their name and date of birth.
Right. Okay, that's cool. We can do up there. Sure. What's your favorite sport? That makes sense. That really does make sense. All right. And you know, like I've done a lot of these sign up things recently, just trying to get the feel of what people do. A lot of times when you answer the last question, that'll pop up the next question. And you just keep going, because some people just keep answering questions. So we could easily have that JS, and wherever that list of questions they give up on, that's where we go back and say your profile is 18% complete. Your next question is this, and you know, in other words, but that's the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I totally trust these guys to kind of design that flow and how it'll flow. Right. And it'll be different if you're on if you're on a desktop, like a laptop or something, than if you're on mobile.
Sure.
It's going to look and feel different. But yes. Okay, so let's just kind of step through this again so that we're clear. For the onboarding, they're going to provide us with their email and their password.
Right.
The system will send them an email. They will click a link in the email to verify their account.
Okay, we got to take a step back.
The system.
The step back should be, if they sign on to UB Sports, aren't they going to see the site to start off with? If I just get a
Yeah, I
Google
mean,
alert.
anonymous, there are certain things that anonymous users are going to be able to do.
I would say something like either a
So-
time period or a number of pages they get through, and then click in, it's really better to become a member in one way or another.
Well, sure. I mean, we can kind of track that somehow or whatever.
Or just be obnoxious to pop things up every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you can have like a call out in the top for, at the top of the screen on every single page. You can have some special graphic that says,
Yeah.
sign up. It's better if you sign up,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't, that's not really part of the onboarding process. That's just a matter of how do you promote to people who aren't members. Likewise, someone who is a member, you're not going to be displaying that call out, that call to action. You're not going to be asking them to sign up on every page, right?
Right. It's nice if
Someone
you
who's already.
You're missing a lot of the stuff you'd like to see. You should join to see the rest of it.
Yeah, however we sell that works. But the onboarding process itself is, at some point they're going to decide that they want to sign up.
Right.
How you get them to that point is a marketing tactic, right? But they're going to give us their email and password. The system is going to send an email to them. They're going to click a button in the email that verifies their account. As soon as they do that, a welcome email will be sent to them. So that's now 2 emails they've received from us. Okay. They will complete the mandatory profile data.
Right.
And at the time they do that, there will be some optional data that we ask them for, such as favorite sport.
Right.
Maybe we ask them what their role is in their favorite sport. What's your favorite sport? Basketball. Are you a player, a coach, etc.? So maybe you ask them that as well.
Right. And that could just be like a drop down list, and you check all the ones that
Yeah. The next step, which is not necessarily going to be in sequence, but the next step will be for the member to complete their profile.
Right. That would be that other email. Your profile is blank.
But whether they do that right at that time or not, I think once the mandatory data is collected,
right,
we should be sending another email that encourages them to complete their profile.
Right.
And encourages them
where they left off
to join groups.
Right. Agreed.
And I'm going to give some thought on where that should happen. Like, we shouldn't just send it as soon as they fill out the mandatory data, because they may actually sit and fill out the rest of their profile there.
Right.
So it's almost like after they log out, once they've done the mandatory profile and then they log out, even if they don't actually log out and the site logs them out automatically, their session dies.
Right.
That's when that email would be triggered. Okay.
Right.
And it could, the email could be, could have two purposes. And one is to encourage them to complete the profile and encourage them to join groups or teams or whatever. And may even include, a piece of content related to their favorite sport, something that would get them to come back to the site. Check out this video on your favorite sport or something. Then the user will start to join groups and teams. And if they join a group or team or a sport where that governing body requires parental approval, then we're going to trigger that parental approval.
Right.
So that to me is what I see. Now I'm going to try to wordsmith this and see if there's anything else in there, but that in a nutshell is what we have. So in addition to all the other stuff, if you can kind of think through that onboard process, if there's anything else that has to go in there. And once I kind of get it written up, I'll drop it in Slack so you can kind of look at it.
Right. And I'm gonna take this thing also and work on that next level. What are we gonna ask after they tell us what their roles are in their different sports? Do we go to like what groups or teams they want to belong to, or do we take them to the next step and say, okay, let's talk about your physical characteristics. How fast do you run? How much do you bench? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think once they join sports and they identify, who they are for that sport, athlete, coach, et cetera, I mean, then where you take them next, the next step is going to be different.
Right. I agree.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole tree. We have to do the whole tree on that.
Yeah. I don't particularly consider that part of the onboarding, and I don't think that's what the developers are looking for.
I don't think so either.
That would be considered, profile management.
Yeah, workflow.
Right, where I'm managing my, and we can kind of get into that during the onboard process. We can encourage them to complete their profile more, but that's not really what I think they're looking for when we talk about the onboard process.
Right.
What really prompted them to ask that was when we said the parent-child thing.
Right.
That kind of like blew them out of the water, right? They were like, well, wait a minute here. Now maybe you should really kind of clarify your whole onboard process.
Right.
Okay, that's it for now. I've got plenty to work on.
Yeah.
So do you and Kelly. Let's try to regroup if we can early Monday morning. We told iLeaf we would get them feedback, by midday Monday so that we can talk Wednesday.
And I'm expecting an update in SRS too. So we're going to talk Wednesday with them?
So what's that?
We're talking Monday or Wednesday with them?
Yeah. We're going to talk to them on Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday came.
Okay, and we said to them that we would get them some feedback on the onboard process and that kind of stuff by Monday.
Okay. So between now and then, let's work on it.
Okay, so yeah, so that's why I'm saying let's, you, me, and Kelly should try to regroup on Monday morning to kind of refine what we're going to send off to them.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
And we should have a better idea if we're even in a position. I mean, we might talk Monday morning, be like, wait a minute, we're in no way ready to give this to them.
Right.
We might need another day or two or whatever. So let's, the three of us, if you can set that up with Kelly, whatever time works best for her. Monday, I'm free. So any time is good for me on Monday. But if you can coordinate that with Kelly to try to set something up for us for Monday morning, maybe, I don't know if you plan on having a staff meeting at 11.
I don't know if it's
But
really
if
necessary
not,
this week. I am trying to get them to give
what's
us.
that?
You know what? We'll do a short one. It'll just be like we're still working on the site. We need your input. Please go to the site, do a couple of accounts, see what it feels like, and where you see we need help with and what you like. So at least including that stuff in there.
Yeah, but maybe you, Kelly, and I can get together before that meeting then.
You want to say 9:30?
Like, I don't know that we would need an hour and a half, but
Right.
9:30 works. We can disconnect. You know, if you want to try to get it to run into the 11 o'clock meeting,
They'll start at
you know,
10.
maybe start at 10 or 10:15, something like that, whatever. I mean, I don't know what her availability is.
All right.
Find out from Kelly, you know, find out from Kelly what her availability is, and you know, we'll go from there.
Okay.
But I'm totally flexible for Monday.
All right.
The idea is that we should at least decide whether we have what we need to send them or not. Because if we don't feel we're ready to send them a description of the onboarding process, the opt-out stuff, the profile types, things of that nature, if we're not ready yet to send that, we should at least communicate that to them, because then maybe the Wednesday meeting is premature.
Right.
Okay, so that should be the purpose for Monday, is for us to all come to consensus, consolidate all of our thoughts and ideas into one thing, and determine if it's ready to be sent to the developers.
Yep.
That should be the objective for Monday. All right.
Yeah. And she says she's available at 10
Okay.
on Monday.
Okay, great.
All right. Send me in as you go along. Send me some interim stuff or put it up on Google or whatever.
Okay.
You know, that's one of the things I don't like
Will do.
about Slack. You can't just put in their documents into Slack. It's a little frustrating.
Well, you can.
In messages, I can send you a message with a document, but I can't just
Oh,
put it in
hold on
a
a second.
repository that I can find. I can't find it. So
No. Okay. Yes, I understand what you're saying. There's not really a file repository, but I believe the way we should do that is, you know, we should have a document either in, you know, in some repository like Dropbox or something.
Right.
And then what you do is you put a link in Slack. You don't put the actual document. Right?
Okay, I've already done that. I do have a link there to the Dropbox drive for UB Sports. So you'll see that if you go to whatever it is, documents or something. Let me see. I have it under. Let's see, under file browser. I actually have some documents already saved there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, whatever you can put up in file browser in UB Sports, and I'll do the same.
Okay. Very good.
All right, man. Thank you, John.
Yep. Thank you.
Ciao.
See ya.